Hi, thank you for joining us, even though it's not live because Facebook hates me today. This is Julia Campbell and Josh Hirsch, and we are the nonprofit social media nerds, and we go live, or we try to go live every Friday at noon in May, and we're talking about what's next, what's the new normal, the next normal for nonprofits in a post-pandemic world. So the topic today, I'm actually really excited about, and I really had hoped that it would work, but of course technology doesn't work. I'm such a lover of technology too, and Josh, you know, it hates me. It absolutely just doesn't like me, and I don't understand why. But I have a love-hate relationship with it. So I'm really excited to have our guests here today, and I'm not going to do a very long-winded introduction and like read their bios. I'm going to let them introduce themselves when we get into the topic. But we have Josh Hirsch, Director of Mission and Communication at Susan G. Komen, Florida. We have Emil Guillermo. I believe I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Very good.
He said the L and the Y.
Very good.
He works for the Filipino American National Historical Society Museum, and he is a journalist and an avid blogger. We have international fundraising expert and author Tom Ahern here with us today, and avid tweeter as well, avid Twitterer. And my friend Nick Byrne, all the way from the UK, founder of Give Panel and Facebook fundraising, social media fundraising expert. So we're going to have an awesome conversation today, and I'm really sorry that you can't watch it live, but that's fine because you're just going to have to watch the recording. We had a really great warm-up conversation around quite a few topics, so I think it's going to be really, really interesting. So obviously none of us have a crystal ball. None of us can see into the future. There have been crises in the United States and internationally that have affected fundraising, and there are some studies that have been done around what happens when you fundraise in a crisis. But the whole point is that we just don't know. There's no guidebook, there's no handbook, there's no roadmap really for us today, but we can learn by what's going on right now. And I think we can learn from the past and what's worked. And there are some things that I think are always going to work. So I wanted to ask the first question to Tom, because I know it's a question he gets probably 3,000 times a day, and I get quite a lot. Is it okay to fundraise right now? Should nonprofits be fundraising right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. This is not an excuse to stand down. There are a couple of reasons why. You may not do that well, because I did see some types of organizations are doing better than others. What Mark Phillips over in the UK came up with in his research just in the last few weeks is that people who are not financially pinched, so they're not worried about that part of their life, are continuing to support their charities. Again, you know, you have your favorites and then you have the rest, and they're giving additionally to charities that have something to do with the coronavirus relief effort. And then there are the people that have lost their jobs, and of course they're cutting back on everything. So in some ways, one of the reasons why we are so happy that many donors are 65 and older is that their financial situation is under control, and this is not doing a lot of damage in that age cohort. And they are about half of the donors in the United States are in that age bracket.
Okay. So what would you say to an organization that feels really hesitant to fundraise right now? What advice have you been giving them?
It's their latest excuse.
Okay, I agree.
It's all it is their latest excuse, and it looks like a good one, but it's wrong.
Okay. And Nick, what are you seeing in terms of online fundraising, Facebook fundraising?
Yeah, so specifically in terms of Facebook fundraising, we're seeing some amazing results. Surprisingly, I think I was saying in the chat beforehand that it's a bit like the stock market at the moment. You know, everything seems really bad economically, but then the stock market is doing really well, and fundraising on Facebook at least feels a little bit like that. It feels a little bit like boom time. Couple of reasons I think that is. One is obviously people are at lockdown with this and spending more time on social. So that's one interesting kind of finding. So we found on GivePanel that actually, if you compare April, the number of fundraisers on average for all our clients who are doing Facebook fundraising, that the number of fundraisers has not dropped. It stayed about the same, but the average fundraiser is bigger. And I think that's because the average fundraiser raises more at the moment. And that's because just more people are on social, more people are responding to fundraisers. So it's pretty good. If you're doing Facebook advertising as well, right now, a lot of businesses are out of that auction. They're out of the ad platform, because if you're a restaurant or an events business or film, cinema, whatever it might be, you're not paying for advertising right now. And so actually at the same time as traffic being up, the less competition in the auction. So Facebook ads are actually very, very reasonable right now. And so that's that's making your fundraising more efficient.
Kind of as an introduction, tell us about what you do. Tell us about GivePanel so we can get a complete understanding of how you work with your clients.
So your listeners are probably aware there's this thing called Facebook Donate, right? And Facebook charitable giving tools. And I think one of the biggest stated issues that people think about Facebook giving is the lack of data. And so our product helps nonprofits get the data for Facebook fundraising. We help manage all the data side. We've built the tool that you kind of wish you had on top of Facebook Donate. So you can take advantage of all the great features of Facebook Donate and Facebook fundraising, which is, people don't have to leave Facebook, and the conversion rate's much higher because they don't have to go to a separate platform and remember a username and password and that kind of thing. And they're already connected to their family and friends and things like that. Mm-hmm. Those are great advantages of Facebook Donate. And the problem was data. And so we solved that problem where we actually help you reach out, steward those kind of super supporters that are fundraising for you, and collect and manage the data so you can kind of look after those new supporters. And that's what Facebook is for me. It's about new acquisition of supporters. 9 out of 10 out of all the data on GivePanel, 150 clients, 9 out of 10 fundraisers are new to an organization, not already fundraising for they're not new to the cause. They're passionate about your mission, but they're not necessarily already in your database. And so that's what I live and breathe at the moment.
I love it. All right. Well, Emil, tell us more about where you work. And the reason I asked you on was that you have a really great success story for such a small organization, especially one that's been so dramatically affected by COVID.
Yeah, I use this virtual backdrop of the grass. We really are a grassroots micro organization.
That's a very good segue.
Well, the Filipino American National Historical Society is based in Seattle, and we're the museum part, which is based in Stockton, California, because this is where the largest gathering of Filipinos were in the first wave of immigration in the 30s. And so I'm in the Central Valley of California. I've been working with the museum as a presenter. I do one-man shows on Filipino American history, and I saw that they were kind of in trouble, not really growing. In January, they said, come on, join the board. And so I joined the board. In February, I was officially a board member. And in March, we officially got the pandemic. And so I am a newbie, neophyte in all of this. I first encountered Facebook as a college undergrad when Facebook was a literal book, and you used a book of faces to pick out which girls you wanted to go out with. That was years ago. I am too stupid to know that this would be the bane of democracy and this would be the future of capitalism. I was that dumb. And so encountering Facebook now, I said, what am I going to do? And then I discovered your course, which was first a book on Kindle, and then I found my way online to your course. And you remember on the webinar, I was probably the most, I questioned you on everything. I said,
it's great though.
Why won't we just go to email? Why won't we just email people who know us? And then you said, oh, unencumbered funds, unrestricted funds. Don't you need some unrestricted funds? Well, of course, in the pandemic, we do. And so here we are trying to spread the word of Filipino American history, trying to preserve Filipino American history. And we're only open on weekends. We're an all volunteer organization. We depend on people walking in the doors and giving us some money, a check, buying a t-shirt, a book, and we're shut down. And we have rent to pay, we have bills to pay,
Yep.
and suddenly I'm this rookie museum director trying to figure out how are we going to do this. And now I worked at NPR before I was a journalist, and I know that well, they're notorious for asking for money, but how was I going to ask for money? I didn't know how to ask for money. And so with the tips from your course, I turned to Facebook. I took the course on a Wednesday or Tuesday, midweek. On Saturday, I had a few beers and said, oh, I got to do something productive. This is the first week of pandemic. It took me 2 minutes. I found a picture, an historic picture of Filipino immigration to the United States. I wrote a 2-paragraph post. I set the goal at $1,000. I sent it out using the tools of Facebook. And in less than 24 hours, I had met our goal.
Oh, it makes me so happy.
Less than 24 hours. I said, oh my God, I should have asked for more money.
Well, Emil,
Right.
you
can increase the goal.
Yeah.
That was my question.
Right. I should have increased the goal, but I was such a neophyte. I just left it. I said, thank you for, you know, I had subsequent messages. Thank you for letting us reach this goal. But, you know, we have other months perhaps coming up. Please don't stop giving. I'm going to give you a little bit. I'm going to reward you for more money. We're going to put up a podcast that we did with some people about Filipino history. I'm going to tell more about my father who came in 1929. And it's a picture of my father and my mother together. And he came in 1929 not as an immigrant, but as a Filipino, as an American national, because the Philippines was a colony. And between 1930 and 1950, because of anti-intermarriage laws and the racism toward Filipinos and the lack of Filipino brides, I mean, how can you marry your own kind when you prevent your own kind from coming to America? It wasn't until after World War II that my mother was able to come to San Francisco, meet my father, and then I was born, the real cause of the celebration. And so I told that story in my post. We got a little more money. I should have maybe upped the goal, but like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. We ended up with about $1,700. And with Julia's tips, we created a launch team that we now every month, we're going to go out in a very just in a very low key way, raise money for our museum, hopefully to get those unencumbered funds to pay our rent, our utilities. And it's all like, we were really in trouble. We had a golf tournament set up. We had a hole-in-one tournament, that kind of thing, canceled, right? We had a gala dinner, canceled. We had nothing, but we had Facebook. And the one thing that I would say, I have, 1,000 Facebook friends on I think you know what friends are on Facebook.
Right, really, quote unquote.
But the invites went out to 10% of my friends, and a large proportion of those gay. I think we had maybe out of the 100 who got the invites, 20% gay. So
I love that story. The story that you told, that's the reason. Like if you just put up the Facebook donate button, I don't think it would have been as effective. I love that you told that personal story.
Yeah, I think it's that, but I think it's also the fact that in these times, and this relates to what Tom was saying, that it doesn't matter. Everyone's facing the same pandemic, things coming at them, and some are going to be a little better off, and some are going to, some are going to really feel the pinch. But if you're aligned with, if people know you, and then that's a good thing about Facebook, people generally know you. But if you're aligned with values, that's the thing. They will donate, in proportion to what they have, and the generosity will still be there. So I am a new believer to Facebook, a new believer in Julia Campbell and what she does.
Oh,
No, your
I
course,
didn't pay him.
she didn't pay, but the course really was a step by step. Here's what you do. Here's the post. Here's the pictures. Here's how you can form a launch team. Here's how you can go out and make this an every single month thing in a very like an NPR. One of the big criticisms is that, oh, they're always fundraising. They're always asking for money. And this is a way that you're not overdoing it. And I it's made my life in the pandemic as a museum director so much easier because of what I found in your course.
Oh, now I really did not invite Emil on here to just say how amazing I am. I actually invited him on because I think it's a really great case study of a very tiny all volunteer nonprofit with a $50,000 budget that is not COVID-19 healthcare. It's not on the front lines. It doesn't have it's not serving nurses or doctors. It's not a blood bank, that's the reason. I just think I really want to impart to people that personal story and just using some of these tools at your disposal now, if your golf tournament is canceled, if your gala is canceled, and like being able to adapt to that new reality. So that really, even though I love all the praise, obviously, but I really want to impart to nonprofits that they can do this and they should be fundraising like Tom said, and they can. And if people connect to the mission, that they will be able to raise money.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Josh. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Emil.
I just want to say, you mentioned the nurses in the front lines. I mean, of course, when we have a built-in affinity group, right? Filipino Americans, Asian Americans, but who's on the front lines right now? Asian American doctors, Filipino nurses outsized, impacts on them. Because I'm a journalist, I write for the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund as well. And I've been writing on Asian American issues for the last 25 years. Something I wrote on Filipino nurses was picked up by STAT, the science offshoot journal for the Boston Globe. And they did a whole big thing on Filipino nurses. And so that was right in our wheelhouse. People responded to that. We were right in line with the whole COVID mentality, because we weren't just sitting idly on the sidelines. We were actually involved, and people saw that. And so it dovetails with May, which is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, and also National Nurses Month too, coincidentally.
That's true.
All of these, I think all these sorts of months, they come up in May, but there's always a reason to ask for money, or to put out your shingle and say, or put out your hat and say, please be generous, help in our mission, please be the hero, come help us. And that's my 2-month lesson in how to be part of a charitable community, or a nonprofit community. And I've been pretty much a nonprofit all my life. My wife works for a nonprofit. I've worked in both mainstream but also nonprofit journalism. And so I've come to the museum world thinking, oh, this would be easy. It's just museums, but it comes at a time when we're the most hit, the hardest.
Exactly.
And so it's been quite an education, and I can't really thank you enough for just laying out the pathway for me. Thank you, and my organization. Thank you.
Well, I had a question also for Tom, because you had talked about earlier how this is a very unusual time, not just because of the pandemic, but unusual time of year to fundraise. Do you see the pandemic disrupting our usual year-end focus on year-end, or not? What do you see?
Well, I doubt it. I mean, I think if you looked at that chart that I have from the Better Fundraising Company, Stephen Screen, Jeff Brooks put it together, you have this surge right now, which is people feel helpless. And so they want to do something that makes them feel like they have some control.
Yep.
According to Mark Phillips, that's why people are stocking up on toilet paper, because it gives them a feeling of some form of control. And, oh, do you have that?
Yeah. Can you see it?
Yeah. And, so there's a little bump, then the slump, but the slump would have happened at this time of year anyway, because the summer in the northern hemisphere is not a great fundraising season typically across all charities. I mean, there are variants of everything, but the conventional season is your October, November, December. And I think that, minus the people that are financially distressed, I think our giving season is going to do just fine at the end of the year.
Well, that's really encouraging. I like to hear that. Nick, what do you think? What do you think about the bump, the slump, the surge, and Facebook fundraising? And what's the future? Where's it going?
I think the surge is certainly happened like that. That dovetails with what our data says. I think, I guess the phase 2 depends on how charities react. So a big trend, as you know, Julie, that we're seeing is like the shift into digital, the shift away from physical events, for example, to virtual events. Mm-hmm. Now, if we can do those kind of shifts, then maybe we'll sustain a little bit better. We're seeing some really, really successful virtual events going on Facebook right now. So things like that, innovation, can that help during the slump? But I love that point that Tom said. We call it positive control response. When people, like, they're at home, they're not sure of other things, but they can, they see something that a mission they want to give, people are still giving. And so I think, yeah, I guess that's what I think. But possible we could go through a slump. Right now we're in a bump, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a challenge. Josh, what are you seeing at Komen?
Yeah, Florida? I think the bump slump surge is pretty right on line with what we've experienced over the last, 8 weeks now. While other organizations typically don't fundraise during this time, we do. Mother's Day is a tie-in with breast cancer. So we typically have a full all-out, once again, I planned 12 months ahead of time. I had a whole content calendar. I had all kinds of touches, and, March 14th came around and pause on everything. So we paused our Mother's Day appeal while we are still sending out something on Saturday. I've got a great video with a young daughter and her mother talking and talking about what it is to have her around. It's not the same sort of push that we would have done had there not been this immediate need for the bump that we saw. So in those first 2 weeks, and I'm done saying the word pivot, we adapted and adopted to our new situation. And we sent out a direct to mail appeal. We sent out both direct to mail and an email campaign. We had donor reactivation. These lapsed donors who hadn't given to our organization over 10 years were all of a sudden giving dollars. And they saw that immediate need. It's Tom said they wanted a way to feel good about what they could do. Even if it was $25, $50, $100, it didn't matter. So now we've been able to re-engage these people to realize that our cause, and once again, it doesn't matter if you're a museum, it doesn't matter if you're a breast cancer organization, it doesn't matter if you're a homeless shelter or a food bank, we are all essential. We all have that essential need for our clients. Stephen Shattuck put out a great tweet about this, and people are assuming just because you aren't providing shelter, providing food, you're not essential, and that's not the case. I mean, women and men still need to be able to receive treatment for breast cancer. People still want to get their cultural experiences. These ballets, these art institutions all need a way to be able to still connect with their supporters, and they've got great content to share. The ability to bring me into your museum virtually, now is the time. So as we're, Nick was saying, like, how are we going to evolve with what this technology is allowing us? We now have no barriers. And you have to think about that. Right now, Nick's in the UK. Tom, you're up in Rhode Island right now. Emil, you're where?
California.
In California. Julia's in Boston, and I'm here in Florida. So we have the ability to bring everyone together at all times now. So these distance barriers are gone. So the same thing should be said for your fundraising. The same thing should be said for your content creation and communication. How are you going to stay relevant with the notion that we have this filter of COVID going on, but still staying true to your mission-focused content? And that's really what we all need to be focusing on.
Josh, one of the things that in this dovetails with what Nick is saying, of going to virtual. I mean, if you were even like a Luddite before. Well, there's no reason, you can't be a Luddite now. This is the new world. We're digital, we're virtual, we're global. Everyone talks about the global, universe. Well, now we really are global because we talk on Zoom and we're, as you say, you're far flung all across the world. And so here I am with this little micro museum in Stockton, that a place that probably no one wants to ever visit. I mean, I say that sort of jokingly, but the truth is no one's going to make a visit to my museum unless they know how important it is. And those people who are in my affinity group will make it their Mecca maybe once a year. But if I turn my museum into a virtual place, a place where they can go to, 10 minutes a day, they can go to 5 times a month, and then they know that I just enlarged Stockton to the world. And now my audience is not just Stockton, not just Filipinos, but everyone who's interested in history, American history, Asian history, and they will donate to me. And so now all our future plans, beginning from our Facebook roots, have now expanded because we're virtual. We're all over the place, and people from all over can give to us. And that inspiration comes from the realities of the pandemic. So in many ways, it's a silver lining for small museums to play big, because we don't have to be small.
Mm-hmm. And I think the advantage for small nonprofits is that they can be agile, and they don't have a huge bureaucracy to go through, and they don't have huge committees, and they don't need their email. Well, sometimes they do. I mean, I've worked with small nonprofits that have had to have their emails read by 10 different people before they go out. But I do think that what I've been seeing is that it's the organizations that have built up, like Tom, you had that amazing tweet where I actually really wish that I pulled it up. I'll put it in the quote, in the captions, in the comments. But you said, what do you do now? Oh, you take a time machine and you go back 3 years and you build your relationships with your donors and you communicate with them constantly. And then now you're fine now. So maybe you could reiterate on that tweet that I probably misquoted terribly. But the point was, you can't just invent everything right now. You have to have built up that trust.
Yeah, I think in some ways, and I don't, these are serious times, people are dying, so I don't want to be misunderstood as being facetious, but that is my point is that the coronavirus is a gift to fundraising. It's forcing us to do the things, yes, we should have done 3 years ago. It's forcing us to investigate all these tools that have been sitting there. And Facebook fundraising is not a new thing, as all of you know. Soy Dog down in Bangkok, Thailand, raised money internationally for their animal shelter in Thailand back in 2008 through Facebook, and a fortune, not a little bit, a fortune. And so this tool has been sitting there. Social media is such an interesting new thing. Well, it's a new old thing. I mean, it's kind of like we've always been hoping to move in this direction, and now we're there, we have it. So now you have to explore it. And people are finding, as Emil did, that they are making more money through virtual events than they made through the physical event. Now, in part, that's because it's different. If you've been having a physical event for 27 years, as one of the case studies did, and suddenly you're not doing that, it's like, whew, now we don't have to go to that event. We can do something a little different, and this will get old too eventually. But for the moment, it's not old, it's novel. People want to, Jen Shang, the psychologist in the UK at the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy, she points out that people are feeling very powerless right now. And what is it? Paralyzed, these are her 5 words: paralyzed, confined, victimized, disarmed, and powerless. And what we can do, what the charity can do, and what we've always needed the charities to be more alert to, is that they can deliver joy to their supporters. And you can make them feel connected. These, again, are Jen's words: cared for, listened to, bring them together, be part of a community. And so there are advantages to this crisis from a fundraising standpoint.
Hey, Tom, you're right
I
in this.
love that.
That one of the things that I picked up from just looking at other ads and looking at how people respond is that you give people that the power to feel joy by giving, the power to be the hero, as it were. I mean, I know that's been used a lot in solicitations and, in the copywriting, parlance, but it's true. People are looking for a way that they can come in and swoop in and save, in my case, save our museum, keep the doors open. And that's a good feeling in these times. Where can you get that kind of feeling, in this pandemic?
And I think a lot of the of what you're both saying, is around community. And what the trend that we're seeing, and the big tool that maybe isn't being talked about enough, is the Facebook group, right? The Facebook group in this environment has become the key community while you can't actually meet with people. And we had a case study of a small hospice in Ireland, quite a small market, right, compared to the US and the UK, where they raised the equivalent of $250,000, actually $300,000, by doing a very simple fitness challenge, press ups basically, in a month. And they drove a couple of thousand people into a Facebook group, linked them to Facebook fundraisers, and raised $300,000. But the real key was, if you were part of that community group, the community was amazing. It was like a team coming together, everyone taking videos of their push-ups every day, and hundreds of comments on posts. It was just community, because Facebook have improved the rating of community on their platform, right? They've downgraded your page, but they've upgraded community. They've upgraded the Facebook group. It's free, right? Emil, there's a really good idea I had for you. There's now a virtual pub in the UK. It's an online community. They actually raise a lot of money now. It's a virtual pub in Liverpool. They can't meet in the real pub, so it became virtual. It blew up, and now they raise money. And so there's no reason you can't have virtual places on Facebook groups. You could quite easily gather your museum and post artifacts every day in your group and have a virtual museum and raise money that way, and just link off to the Facebook fundraiser. And I think there's all this innovation happening, but I think community is the big trend. It's like, if community stops in the real world, it has to happen somewhere. We need it. We're created for community, I think, is what Tom was saying. And if then we're going to find an outlet. It's going to be somewhere, and I believe it's really funneled in a huge way into Facebook groups. I mean, do you guys each have like a number of Facebook groups for topics that you're interested in outside of work, right? You probably frequent, right? I think I've got like 300 of them, but
I have a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. And they're around physical places like churches, and they're around physical things like schools, and they're around virtual things as well, like topics. And I think the power of the Facebook group might actually be the most powerful thing about Facebook fundraising for the next couple of years at least.
And maybe even more powerful than Facebook ads, the Facebook group and marketing to groups, as opposed to marketing, because we tried some Facebook ads because we thought, oh, well, this is fairly cheap. We have a budget of $10. Let's see who we go out to. But we miss the closeness of the affinity. I mean, we get a general affinity of all the Filipinos in the United States, but we don't get the same kind of closeness as we would from a group. So thank you very much for that idea.
A great idea.
The other thing, just to point out, really quickly, Facebook have taken the groups to the next level. Mm-hmm. So they have a lot of moderation features that nonprofits may have dismissed 2 years ago, 1 year ago. They may have gone, we can't kind of control the group as much. Facebook have some well, you guys know because you run a group, but haven't they improved the moderation and the power of the admins in the group? So nonprofits
I haven't even scratched the surface. I haven't even scratched the surface, but yes, it's such an improved user experience on the part of the admins, and a user experience on part of the group members. And I was just going to say, I belong to a group called Accidental Homeschoolers, and all we do is bitch about homeschooling all day. And I was thinking, why? And it's like thousands of people. Why don't we raise money for something like that? Why haven't I thought of that? So I'm going to bring that to them tonight and say, you know, we're all bitching and sharing memes and like talking about how we can't like deal with homeschooling our kids, but why don't we channel that energy into something good? I didn't even.
Do you know what makes me cry
think of that idea?
Do you know what makes me cry inside just a little bit every time I see it?
Oh no.
Is when a Facebook group gets set up and they do a fundraising ask and they link
to GoFundMe
out of Facebook. Yeah. Because, you know, anytime you've got to leave the platform, like sign up for another account, it's just going to kill the results. And so it's like I do just cry a little bit inside when I see a great potential
Facebook group. Right, exactly. I mean, it's different.
Yeah, keep everyone on Facebook. That's the best idea. Okay,
so this has been really, I say this every time and I feel badly, but I really think this has been like our best Facebook Live, quote unquote, which is not, but you know what? We talk smack about Facebook. We praise Facebook. You know, we love, hate it. So I just really want to keep this going, but I like to keep these to like 45, 50 minutes. I wanted to ask each of you, maybe Josh, you could start. What is your biggest piece of advice for the overwhelmed fundraiser? What should they be thinking about right now?
So
or not thinking about?
Right. Well, the piece of advice, and it goes back to everything we're saying, don't be afraid to fundraise now. Go back to what your roots are. And as we all know, it's that emotional connection to your cause is what's going to make someone give. So it's telling that story of why, you know, someone needs to support a meals organization. Someone should be supporting that food bank. What is it that makes you stand out amongst everyone else? You know, our friend Julie at the North Georgia Animal Shelter.
Humane Society or Animal Rescue.
They do an incredible job. Yeah. I mean, they're amazing. You would not think necessarily, okay, now is the time to support an animal shelter, but they do just such an incredible job of telling their story, making that emotional connection to you that you want to open your wallet. So how are you as an organization, whether you identify yourself as being essential, and once again, we're all essential organizations for our clients or supporters or whatever word you want to use, how are you going to authentically tell your story? I'm going to bring it back to the groups. You know, pages are really becoming not efficient. Yeah, I mean, it's just not an efficient way. It's too much of I'm talking at you and not creating that authentic engagement that groups are allowing us to do. And once again, we're seeing Facebook, you know, as they did before with Facebook Live, dumping major ad dollars into letting you know that. And now groups are where you can create that authentic community, those segmented, rich conversations. And from that, you can create that affinity. You can create that desire to support that animal shelter or support that organization that's going to get food in the kids' backpacks for the weekend when they can't, you know, allow it. Don't try to stray away from what you do best. Okay, I'll stop. There we go. I could go on.
Tom, you want to go?
Well, first of all, it's Julie Seymour Edwards, and it's Northeast Georgia Humane Society or something like that. And everybody who wants an ongoing practical course in how to do interesting Facebook posts should like them and join that group.
And Twitter too. She does a great job on Twitter.
Oh, it's amazing stuff. I'm constantly stealing her stuff. The one thing I would add to this, because it came up, I was talking to somebody at United Way, and they had sent out an emergency appeal, and they got a complaint from one of the major donors. And you know how that is in a charity. You get a complaint and everybody goes into hiding for 12 months. You will get complaints. Don't worry about it. Complaints are good.
You send out an email to 10,000 people and one person complains and you worry about that one person.
Exactly. It is part of the normal life. So don't worry about it. Somebody will, in fact, in the direct mail world, one of the little dark secrets is if you get no complaints, you probably haven't done something strong enough.
Yes. Love it. Absolutely. Yes. If no one says anything about the piece of communication that you sent out, good or bad, it means they ignored it. So I know that's how I feel. And Tom, I'm sure you get complaints on your email newsletter, and you probably get thousands of people that say they love it, and then that one person that says they hate it or they were offended, and that's what happens when you.
And some of the best conversations is with that one person.
That's true. So
Mennonites really don't like me because I use bad language.
Oh, I offend somebody with every email newsletter. I could go into it. We could compare stories about it. But then I agree, it sticks with you. Okay, I love that. All right, Emil, what is your top piece of advice?
Well, I would say take 3 deep breaths and, inspire the vagus nerve to kick in, relax. I don't want to say this too shall pass, but if you go at it from a mindful state, you can take things one step at a time. Take care of your health. Go vegan, whole food, plant-based. My wife is a senior VP at PETA, so
cool.
She doesn't help me with any donation advice, but I'm now fully in the nonprofit mode, and I just think that if you know that you chip away, it's a long journey, and so don't freak out. Take a couple of deep breaths and take Julia's course.
Which I don't know what I'm offering again, but I will let people know. All right, Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, I just think when it comes to Facebook, don't overthink. Just don't overthink it. I think Emil's story is great because it just shows you. I mean, 10 years ago, Julia, do you remember? We'd have to build an entire website, integrate with a payment gateway, and Emil just kept it simple. Put a photo up there, created a fundraiser. In terms of the actual technology part, 2-minute job. And then, by the way, you can delete it if you want, if you get it wrong. So just don't overthink it. Test. Just experiment with Facebook, and just see how it goes over time, and keep experimenting. And so that would be my advice. Don't stop overthinking. Yeah.
I think that one of my favorite stories to tell when I speak, I mean, if I'm ever going to do speaking again, is when I was in the Peace Corps in the year 2000, like ancient history, and we wanted to raise money for a well or a school. I would have to send physical letters home and get people to Western Union me money. I can't even imagine the power that Peace Corps volunteers and other NGOs have now with email, with Venmo, with all of these tools that they have at their disposal. But I love this conversation. Thank you so much. I know your time is precious and all of you are incredibly busy. And I know we're going to get a million questions. So I will try to tag you in the comments on Facebook if it's a question that I feel like you should answer. I will put all of your contact information. If you don't subscribe to Tom's newsletter, you absolutely need to. It's amazing.
100%.
He'll resend it to you if you don't open it, so don't worry. If you miss it on Monday, he'll resend it. So you're most likely to open it at some point. But I'm just really excited to see everything that all of you are doing. So thank you so much. I'm going to end the recording, and then I'm going to put it on. Let me see. I'm going to put it up on Facebook. I'll put it on YouTube. And we'll answer all the questions there. Thank you so much, everybody.